Hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. Make sure at the end of this YouTube episode, please click the bell on the side there so that you'll be notified every time we have uploaded an episode. Today, I'm sharing with you some things from my book and also put some flesh into what is written here. I'm going to talk about the family and things that happen in families that you never plan for. A son who has been athletic, a son who has been very hard working out there. He is in his 30s, and all of a sudden, he gets paralyzed, and for a year, you watch this son of yours lying on a mattress and not able even to sit up. And you know what really goes through your mind and your heart as a father. I want to share that with you today, so hang on. It began with my son complaining. His name is Paul. This is our youngest son. It began with him complaining about, backache. And we bought different things to tie him. He was working with the drilling department, and they would lift heavy metal, and we thought that was affecting him. And he took painkillers, on and off, and then finally went to the doctor. And after doing some checks on him, he prescribed some TB tablets. After quite some months, struggling with this on and off. And he went on with this medication for 6 months, because the doctor had said it was pretty bad. And as the months went on, it was just getting worse. I never forget several episodes that we would be in the office, and all of a sudden, Paul just began to shake, and with this pain and groaning, and it would go for, not really for hours, but it would go for quite a number, 10, 15 minutes. That was the hardest moment, seeing a son, going through such an experience. So after the medication on TB, because they said, hey, you can have TB of every kind in your body except your hair. And I thought, my goodness. So they said, you have a TB of the spine. So after 6 months, he went back to the doctor. It was getting worse. So the doctor prescribed the same medication again, and he went on for 2 months. So meaning he was gone for 8 months taking TB tablets. That was something. But at the end of those 8 months, Paul could not take it up anymore. So we went to hospital. The doctor looked at him, he prescribed some more medicine, and then coming back, one day I decided, let me take him to Kenyatta National Hospital and consult every doctor that is connected with bones, with back problems, with neurology, with the nerves. So we went to Kenyatta. The trip from the house to Kenyatta was very hard for Paul. I could tell as we were walking on the Kenyatta pavements, one of his legs, he began to pull one of his legs. It was getting numb. Not just pain, but numb. So after consulting several doctors on that particular day, one of them sent us to a specialist, a Dr. Musau, in Nairobi Hospital. So we ended up at Dr. Musau's clinic, and Dr. Musau, after looking at Paul, of course he had gone for a second MRI, not far from Nairobi Hospital, And Dr. Musau called the MRI clinic, and he asked for the results. This was after a few hours on the same day. After Musau, got the results, it was, let's confirm it tomorrow. So the following day, coming back to Thika again, on the Thika Road, which was under construction and with so many bumps, Paul was groaning. The whole time he was in pain as we would go over those bumps. And I wished we stayed in Nairobi. I wish we did not have to come to Thika. The following day, he walked to the car for us to go back to Nairobi because we had given another appointment. As we arrived in Nairobi, he could not come out of the car by himself. We had to put him on a wheelchair. Just that journey to Nairobi paralyzed him. He just could not stand, he could not walk. We put him on a wheelchair, we wheeled him in. Well, it's a long story. The doctor checked him and he said, I got to admit you right away. So this was the second day, and Paul was admitted. Here, as Paul was going through, this was 2010, December. As Paul was going through all this, his sister, Catherine, had just come home, and our wedding was coming up in January. So she was here preparing for her wedding, which was going to be in Nairobi, and the reception was going to be at the Arboretum. My goodness, so many things around. So we leave Paul at Nairobi, but the scaring thing was, before that admission, was the paralysis was going upwards, and half of his stomach was numb. And we knew as it was going up where it was heading. It was heading up to his vital organs. And I don't know, some of those hours, I just don't know how they went by. So after the admission, leaving him in the hospital late at night on that second day, driving back to Thika, I didn't know how we got to Thika. I didn't know. My mind, imagining that if his organs are affected by this paralysis, we're going to lose him. Well, the following day, in Nairobi Hospital, they did all kinds of tests. And by the evening, he was ready for an operation. Dr. Musau, he's a good doctor, a neurologist. Dr. Musau did so many hours on Paul and worked on him that night. We didn't see Paul on that day, but we were going back the following day after the operation to see him. Here was Catherine, here was my wife Betty, and I don't know who else. We were going there to see Paul after the operation at night. As we were arriving in Nairobi, what I didn't know was my car was overheating. The radiator just blew up as we were getting close to Nairobi Hospital near a sports club. It was next to the gate of the sports club, and when you see smoke and steam out in the front, you think of parking your car on the side. I parked it on the side. It was in the front of the gate for this special member club. As we stopped there, I thought, quick, because the watchman, the gate man, ran there and said, remove this car quickly out of this place. The members, if any of them find you here, I will be in trouble. So I'm here thinking, I have my wife, I have Catherine and others who are going to the hospital. It's not far. I quickly tell them, jump out, go to the hospital, I'll follow you there. So I asked the watchman, do you know a towing service? Do you know anybody with a breakdown who can come and tow this car because it can't go? When I opened the hood, the radiator was blown up. I mean, because of the pressure. So he said, we can call someone. So he called somebody, but where am I going to take this car? I don't know any garage in Nairobi. I don't know anywhere I can park this car. So as we were waiting for the breakdown, we call it breakdown. Some of you in America, you call it towing. As it was arriving, I had to decide where I'm going to take this car. So very quickly, I remember David Maundu, who works at the Kenya Library Services, which is not far from there, and they have a parking space. So I called him, and oh my goodness, he was not working that day. But I got him at home, and I asked, do you know any one of your staff who could allow us to drive my car inside there and park? Very quickly made arrangements. Let me tell you, it was like this. That was a day. So we parked, and I rushed to the hospital. The hours for visiting, so that they, not be closed out. We arrived at the hospital. We saw Paul lying there. They had done the operation. The doctor went in and took out, the part that, was swelling, and he had pressed at the back on his spine. It pressed the communication from the upper part to the lower part of his body. The day, 2 days, go back, 2 days in Kenyatta Hospital, one of the doctors had looked at his vertebrae and said, two of your vertebrae are eaten up. The TB has eaten up. So if we do an operation, we'll go in there and take the two links and grind them, and I don't know what he said. My goodness. You imagine, somebody taking those bones and grinding them and returning them. Who tells you that you'll ever, wake up or walk again? So we're watching Paul lying there. The doctor said he has taken out what was the problem. There was the lymph nodes, and they were taken for checking, and the results, let me hurry to tell you, the results was 4th stage cancer. It was at the 4th stage that they had just done that damage of a paw. But on that particular day, something else, I'm here, I don't have a vehicle, I have my wife, Catherine is supposed to go and make arrangements at the arboretum. So I got someone to drive them there. And then I had another call while in the hospital. My other son, Moses, was at home and was not feeling well. He calls me, I'm in the hospital. He calls me and said, Dad, if you're in Nairobi, please go to the chemist and buy me the following, medicines. Oh, he's not well. So I have a son lying in Nairobi Hospital. I have another one at home. I need to go and get medication for him. Bishop Mbogo showed up, and I asked him if he could drive me downtown and drive me to Moses' home to take medication. So we leave Paul here. Somebody else, Dr. Lucy Bogwa, was there, and I asked her if she could drive to Arboretum, take Catherine and Irene, and they go there and leave them at the Arboretum to make arrangements for the wedding that was coming up the following week. So we drive down to town. Bishop Bogo stops at Arambe Avenue to go to an office, and while I'm there, I get a call that as they went to the Arboretum, Catherine and Irene, Paul's wife has collapsed at the Arboretum. Now look at it. Paul is lying in the hospital. Last night he had an operation. His wife has collapsed. I'm buying medication to take to my other son, Moses. That was a day I'll never forget. I stood up there, and I said something. I said, Devil, you have the wrong address. Because all he wanted was for me to break down with all these. I mean, you talk about pressure. That was the day that I faced it. son in the hospital. I don't know whether you'll ever walk again. Irene, his wife, has collapsed at the arboretum, and I'm buying medication for my other son. God had to come. I'm telling you, that day, God did not send angels. He came himself to strengthen me. For me to be able even to walk, because you also collapsed. So I gained courage, and I called Dr. Lucy, who was driving to town after she had dropped them. I said, Doctor, please turn around, get back to Arboretum. There's something. So Dr. Lucy turned around, went back to the Arboretum, and went and found Irene. They were giving some quick aid, and they administered Irene. What happened? Irene was not sick. Because of all these about the husband, Irene had not eaten. I don't know for how long. And our body just caved in and quit. So Dr. Lucy discovered what was the problem. All she did was buy something for her, encourage her to eat, and Irene was up on her feet again, ready to go. Now, I had to buy medicine. I had to go to Kiambu, where my son lived then, Moses, to give him medication, and there I would drive his car, because mine, I have already parked it there. I mean, you talk of a family shake-up, my friend. There are days that God has to come by himself and not send an angel. I tell you, he did for me on that particular time. The wedding was coming up for my daughter. Paul was in the hospital, and he asked the doctors if they could allow him to come on a wheelchair to the wedding. Paul, on January 2011, was wheeled in for his sister's wedding at the Arboretum. Let me tell you, we had a great wedding. We had a great wedding. Now here is a sick person, and here, both climaxes, on the bad side, on the good side. It all met on that particular Saturday during Catherine's wedding on 8th of January, 2011. We had guests from all over. We had guests from many, many places. We had a great celebration. We had to take Paul back to the hospital, Nairobi Hospital. We had promised the doctor. So he was wheeled back to the hospital ward, and for several days he was there. But he was released to come and stay at home. And you know what? In my next episode, I'll try to bring you Paul himself. Paul has to tell his side of the story, because today, Paul is walking. After lying, because coming home, Paul was on a mattress. We would carry him in the morning, put him on a mattress in the living room, leave him there with his son. Mark Henry was small. And sometimes we stay with Paul. For me, I can remember in a year when I was left with Paul, the two of us and a little boy. That was a very, very long day, because I was to carry him on my back when he needed to go to the bathroom or to the toilet. I carried him on my back. This is a grown-up man married with a kid. That was a very long day. I want to commend, nurses and medical people for what they do on patients, because I faced it on that particular day. It was more than a year, one day. But anyway, we made it. But month in, month out, we watched Paul lying there. You have to lift him to sit up. And you have, from there, lift him to your back, and then to the bed or to the toilet. For a year, we saw that happen. But there's something else I want to share before I quit. Hang on there. There was a happy side on this story. Because he had a little boy, a 1-year-old, Mark Henry. You know, as you came into the house and opened the door, before your eyes will fall on Paul was lying on a mattress, you'll meet this happy Mark Henry. He came out to meet you at the door. Where have you been? Like, where have you been? I've been missing you. Come home. You know, the two, so that before your eyes fall on a son who is lying on a mattress the whole day, you are met by this picture of Mark Henry. Mark Henry was a happy side of this story of Paul being on the ground. But I want you to know that you will only feel it and enjoy it if Paul himself tells you the story from his heart. But for me as a father, I don't know what I thought. Because when you're told you have cancer for the stage, you know, it's like you got some few months to go. My mind never went there. I never thought of death. I don't know. Maybe it flashed through my mind, but it never stayed there. I prayed for people to be healed. And I've seen some healed instantly. Others, it's taken time. This one we prayed, but it never disappeared right away. More than a year, going to a second year, and then Paul began to feel with his feet, his fingers, his toe fingers, they began to feel some senses. And he began to move them. So it began from there, all the way. And so we had a therapist who would come home and work with Paul. Kawira did a great job. But above all, God did his work of healing Paul from lying on a mattress to standing up. Today he can walk, he can preach, he can present Christ to the multitudes. What a joy. But please, before you switch off, make sure you subscribe. Be a follower of what I'm sharing with you. Bishop Henry Mulandi. Hit the subscribe button right now, and then let us meet again in our next episode. And if I can, Paul will be there to tell you from his heart. God bless you.